if you look at it from the big picture, did a good job of casting people who had a problem to deal with, and a team, although a much smaller team than actually worked during the mission, to work out that solution to problems to enable us to get home and have a good Hollywood ending. So I think the mission overall did that. Now it obviously left out a large part of the team, a large number of people in the team that got us back, which is probably several thousand people actually got involved. For instance, Mission Control even, they only showed Gene Kranz and the white team. Every mission had 4 mission control teams, 4 flight directors. Now I complained to Ron Howard about that when I had the first showing, and he sheepishly said, well, you know, you're making a movie, you only got a little over 2 hours, an action movie, and you only have time to develop so many characters. So that was his explanation. And he picked Gene Kranz as the best character of the 4 flight directors to use in the movie. And same way, why he didn't show a lot of other people that played major roles in solving some of those problems, not mission control, like the lithium cartridge. Was actually done with people in crew systems division who were responsible for spacesuits, environmental systems in both spacecraft, and they actually built the first prototype of that use of the command module cartridge and tested it in a small chamber that had the LEM environmental system, inducing carbon dioxide into that chamber to make sure the prototype worked. Before that was translated by Mission Control into flight checklist vernacular to be read out to us to fabricate. So that's the way that things were done. They exaggerated my throw up. Had a big throw up the actor who portrayed. I had a spit up from space sickness. Yeah, I had Jim Lovell hugging me at one time in the movie, and that didn't happen. And they exaggerated our manual maneuvers. We did 2 mid-courses without the computer. We couldn't afford the power. So we had no computer on, which incidentally might mention computing assets of that day and age. Our big computer, guidance nav and control computer, was hand-wired, had a total memory capacity of about 1/10 of a megabyte. 1/10 of a megabyte, not gigabyte. So that was the computer. So it really didn't do a lot. Guidance, nav, and control. All our systems were manually operated, hardwired. So even our 16 Attitude jets were hardwired to the hand control that we could operate without the computer. You could stop and start all the rocket engines manually without the computer. Although normally most of the major burns we did, we used the computer to do most of that attitude control and start and stop engines. But nevertheless, they did exaggerations of that manual maneuver. One of them we did for mid-course. They had the Earth wavering up and down in the window as if we're about to go out of control. And I complained to Ron Howard too about some of those things. And he said, I tell you, I listened to all the air-to-ground, NASA gave me all of that, all the radio transmissions from Capcom to you and on board and vice versa. And when I got done listening, I said, it never seemed to me you ever had a problem. So based on that, he said I had to humanize you. So that was why he put some of that stuff in the movie.
Do we have time for one last question?
Yeah. I guess from an overall experience time, I'll have to say again, the best time of my life and the most fun in feeling accomplishment and also some benefits to, if you want to call it, humanity, particularly those flying, was my time as a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base, working in NASA Flight Research Center. Got to fly so much every day, sometimes twice a day. I particularly, one time I was asked to go back to the Flight Research Center many years later and talk about the old days, back when I flew there. And I picked out 1 month of my checklist, flight record, which took 2 pages and a slideshow. And in that 1 month, I had flown 9 different types of aircraft and had involved in 3 test programs, as well as, I don't know why the X-15 didn't fly that month, so I didn't have any of the support X-15 type flights. But nevertheless, that was the kind of flying I was doing. The way it was cast to me, and I had a hard time deciding to join the astronaut program and leave that career at the time, was because I knew I was too junior in the office and I would never get to fly the X-15 that I really wanted to fly. It was an all-manual vehicle. From the time you released from the B-52 through that whole flight, it was all manual, stick and rudder. But I realized I would not get to fly it, so that's why I decided to join the astronaut program. And I was somewhat leery because Neil was also a NASA test pilot. In fact, he was 3 years ahead of me. He started at Lewis at Cleveland, as I had. Then he went on to Edwards. Now, Neil got to fly the X-15 before he applied and got accepted into the astronaut program. And he came back and visited once at Flight Research Center, and a couple of his pilots cornered Neil and said, "Neil, what's it like being an astronaut?" Neil's answer was, "Well, you sit in a lot of meetings, you sit in a simulator a lot, and there's not much good flying." So that was his description of being an astronaut, even in the Apollo. He was a Gemini at the time. But because that's true, I mean, you think of people even flown space shuttle 5 or 6, even 6 times, John Young, for instance. It took them years to fly 6 flights. It wasn't like at Flight Research Center, where I said you flew every day. And it was a lot more fun during those years, 3.5 years I had at Edwards at Flight Research Center.
Well, thank you for that. Shannon, would you be so, actually, Fred, do you have closing remarks for our attending cadets before we close out today's session?
Well, I'd just like to say I'm getting to be pretty old, and saw in some of the pictures earlier of the cadets. It was quite envious looking at all those young faces and having their lives and careers ahead. But I can't complain. As I said, I've been blessed to have enjoyed the career I've had, and that I'm still having now with these kinds of conversations. And more recently with Jim Lovell, 97 years old, Jim Lovell. I normally have a FaceTime call once a week with Jim, and unfortunately he's recently passed away. But otherwise, I got no complaints. And all I'd say is I wish all of you young, well, that you find your path ahead, a good one, or a good career in life ahead, and fly safe. That's all I got. Fly safe.